It's the year 1066, a problematic year for the English kingdom, which was now in instability due to dynastic troubles within the country. Harald Godwinson rose to throne but was attacked by the Norwegian king, Harald Hardrada, which was considered an heir to the English throne as well. The former Earl of Northumbia, also the brother of Harald, Tostig Godwinson, allied himself with Hardrada after he was exiled. The English army led by Harald and the Norwegian army led by Hardrada, with the help of Tostig, clashed at the village of Stamford Bridge, East Riding of Yorkshire, in England on September 25, 1066. The young Edward, who would later become the King of England, spent years in Normandy exiled. His father married the sister of Richard II, Duke of Normandy. He rose to the throne in 1042, giving the Normans interests in England. On January 5, 1066, the king died, leaving no clear heir. Several persons claimed the English throne. He had three major successors: Ear of Wessex, Harald Godwinson, the richest and most powerful of the English aristocrats, son of Edward's early opponent, Godwin. He was elected the new king by the Wittnagement of England and crowned by Ealdred, the Archbishop of York. His succession, however, challenged the other two opponents. Duke William of Normandy, who would later become William the Conqueror, claimed that his possession of the throne was promised by Edward and claimed to be the rightful successor, and that Harald had sworn agreement to this. Harald Hardrada of Norway also contested his succession to the throne. His claim was based on an agreement between Magnus the Good and the earlier King of England, Hardrada, whereby if one of them died without heir, the other one will took both the thrones of England and Norway. Both William and Hardrada were furious seeing that their promised crown was stolen, and prepared their fleets to invade England and gain the throne. The Norwegians assembled a massive fleet of about 300 boats to carry the Viking army to the battlefield. However, many historians could not make a difference between war ships and supply ships. In King Harald's saga book, wrote by the Icelandic historian and poet Snorri Sturluson, it is said that King Harald Hardrada had over 200 ships, apart from supply ships and smaller craft. Combined with reinforcements picked up in Orkney, the Norwegian army had a total of troops between 7,000 and 9,000 men fighting for Harald's succession to the throne. In early 1066, Harald's exiled brother, Tostig Godwinson, raided southeastern England with a fleet he had recruited in Flanders. Later joined by other ships from Orkney. Threatened by Harald's fleet, he moved north and raided in East Anglia and Lincolnshire. He was driven back to his ships by the brothers Edwin, Earl of Mercia, and Morcar, Earl of Northumbia. Deserted by most of his followers, he withdrew to Scotland, where he spent the middle of the year recruiting fresh troops against his brother. He felt the same thing as Harald Hardrada, the dethronation of the king. Ousted from his position as Earl of Northumbia and exiled in 1065, Tostig had mounted a series of abortive attacks on England in the spring of 1066. Harald was in southern England at that time, anticipating an attack from his other opponent, William the Bastard, Duke of Normandy, prepared to take his throne promised by Edward. The weather was, however, not favourable to him and his intentions, and would have to wait months. Learning of the Norwegian invasion, he moved north at great speed with his huscarls and as many thanes as he could gather, travelling day and night to secure his crown from foreign invaders. The journey from London to Yorkshire was of about 298 kilometres, or 185 miles if you are American. This whole road took about 4 days, enabling him to take the Norwegians by surprise completely. He rushed through York on September 25th, ready to fight the Norwegians, after learning that the Northumbrians had been ordered to send the additional supply and hostages to the Norwegians at the village of Stamford Bridge, close to that town. Until the English army of Harald made contact with the Norwegian forces of Hardrada and Tostig, they were unaware of a possible ambush from the Vikings from the forest or any other hostilities that could destroy them. According to the Icelandic poet, author of King Harald Hardrada's saga, Snorri Sturluson, Before the devastating battle, a single man rode up alone to the Norwegian king and Harald's brother, Tostig Godwinson. He gave no name, but preferred to speak in person with Tostig, offering to return his earldom only if he would turn against Hardrada and the Norwegian army, giving his support to his older brother. Tostig also wanted to compensate the Viking king and asked what his brother intended to offer for Hardrada. The rider replied, 7 feet of English ground, as he is taller than other men, implies that both Harald Hardrada and his army will be killed and buried on the English soil. Then he returned back from where he came. Hardrada was impressed by the rider's boldness and asked Tostig who was the mysterious man. He replied that the rider was none other than his own brother, Harald Godwinson, wanting to fool the former Earl of Northumbia in betraying the Norwegian king. The exact location of the clash is not known for sure, and many people stated that there was a bridge across the Derwent River made out of wooden planks that no longer exist today. In the 18th century, many bones and guns were found near those territories. On the eastern side of the river was formed of an higher ground and the western side of a meadow. The sudden appearance of the English army caught the Norwegians off guard. Their advance, however, was delayed by a narrow point presented by the bridge itself. A giant Norse equipped with a Dane axe was waiting. The English advance. He blocked the narrow crossing and single-handedly held the army back. With the help of his axe, he began to chop the English troops one by one and killed dozens of them with it. Everyone who dared to cross was cut off. Approximately up to 40 English troops died at the hands of the Norse beast. His killing streak, however, would be stopped by an English soldier who got under the bridge with the help of a barrel and thrust his spears through the wooden planks, mortally wounding the axeman in the process. Now the Anglo-Saxon troops could easily cross the bridge and form an offensive line across the river. The Norse axeman delayed the English army and gave the Norwegians time to form a shield wall to face the incoming attacks over the bridge. Harald's army poured across the river and formed a line similar to Hardrada's one. The battle went far beyond the bridge itself after an English offensive, and although it raged for hours, the Norwegian army decided to let their armor down for more speed, but their decision was a disadvantage and proved to be useless. Eventually, the Norse army began to fragment and fracture, allowing the English troops to force their way and destroy the weakened Scandinavian shield wall. Completely outflanked, Hardrada killed by an arrow to his windpipe, and Tostig slain, the Norwegian army began to disintegrate and their morale was low. But the battle was not yet lost, and it still waged on for additional time. In the later stages of the war, the Norwegian army was however reinforced with troops who had been guarding the ships at Rikkel, led by Steinar, Hardrada's prospective son-in-law. It's said that some of its men collapsed and died of exhaustion upon reaching the battlefield. The remainder was fully armed for battle, unlike the previous troops. Their counterattack, known in the Norwegian culture as Storm, briefly pushed the English advance back, but was soon overwhelmed and or was slain. The Norwegian army was now in total chaos. As given in the chronicles, some Norwegian troops drowned whilst crossing the rivers, pursued by the Anglo-Saxon troops. So many died in areas so small that the field was bleached with bones for about 50 years after the battle. King Harald accepted a truce with the remaining Norwegians, including Hardrada's son Olaf and Paul Thorfinson, Earl of Orkney. They were allowed to leave after the promising that they will not attack the English soil again. Out of the 300 ships that were used initially, only 24 were used to carry the troops back home after their devastation at Stamford Bridge. They spent the winter at Orkney, and by spring Olaf arrived back in Norway. The kingdom was divided and split between him and his brother Magnus, the governor of Norway in Hardrada's absence. The casualties were big on both sides, and some historians says the area was full of bone piles. Harold's victory was however short-lived. 3 days later, William, the Duke of Normandy, launched his attack on September 28th. Harold had to bring his forces south to fight the incoming attack. Less than 3 weeks later, Harald was killed at Hastings. Following his death, William had control over England and could begin his conquest of it, crowning himself the king.